welcome to the Schwartz Advisors report here at Apex. I'm Emma Henderson, the managing editor for Aftermarket News, and with me today is someone you might be familiar with if you read his columns. It's Derek Kaufman with Schwartz Advisors. He is a managing partner. It's so nice to meet you in person finally.
You see, we've seen each other on the screen a lot, but never in person.
We have,
That's
exactly.
Right.
And you've got an interesting topic today. We're talking a little bit about battery electric vehicles in the market. So there's been a lot of activity by OEMs in their BEV plans, and we hear BEV sales are increasing, but also see companies like Ford, Volvo, and Volkswagen reducing their BEV production plans. So how do you see this evolving in the next 5 years?
It's really interesting right now in a very dynamic market, right? So we're in a curve of adoption, right? So the early adopters have been in, they're all in, they're on the coast of the country. And then you have kind of the early majority beginning to come in now to buy cars. But we've had a couple of setbacks. So we went through the winter last year. We had Teslas parked around Chicago. They were dead. We had cars catch fire in the Helene, in the storm. So people have been awakened to some of the foibles of BEV cars. Overall, I believe the technology comes in. I think that it gets adopted, but we have a projection that is more conservative than other people. We just think it takes longer for people to normalize them. And we're also in kind of the third generation of BEV technology. And it gets better each time, obviously. We're going to go through the fourth and fifth, I think, before they get to parity with ICE or internal combustion cars.
That makes sense. So we've seen Europe roll out a series of different tariffs on Chinese BEV models, depending on the brand involved, with the Biden administration moving the tariffs to 100% in the USA. So will these tariffs protect our domestic OEMs from Chinese brands entering our market?
Yep. So the Chinese got a 15-year jump on the world by moving, back in 2009 or so, they began to buy up mineral rights for lithium, manganese, cobalt. They saw electric cars coming before other people did, and they moved on it. And they're capitalizing on that. So 87% of battery content right now comes out of China. And they are producing cars that are really, really good. I don't know if you saw Jim Farley from Ford, the CEO from Ford, talk about how good the Chinese cars. He's been driving a Chinese car around for the last 6 months in Detroit, which is dangerous.
Yes.
But he said these guys are wildly good. They're pacing the world now. So I believe the plan for China is not to just outpace the technology, but to outpace the production around the world, to put their plants in various countries and then basically take the market over with lower priced cars. And I think the Ford and GMs and Stellantis companies of the world are very vulnerable right now. Do tariffs work? Well, they do work for the short term, and Europe's putting them in a kind of a graduated form. We're trying to go to 100%. I ultimately think they backfire. And what they end up doing is keeping really good low-price technology for coming into your market. So I think it's way better to open your market to the new technology, but demand that it's produced inside your market instead of being shipped in from China.
Interesting. So how do you see ICE versus BEV percentages of the VIO over the next 10 years? You kind of touched on this a little bit.
Yeah, so we run a forecast for our clients and we keep it up to date. We look at 7 different powertrains. We track hybrids and plug-in hybrids. We're now looking at mild hybrids and extended range EVs. That's kind of the new term, where the engine is just driving a generator that builds the batteries up. It doesn't drive the car at all. And then we look at full BEVs, and then of course ICE, diesel, and gas. So we project these things out where other people are saying the market's going to be 50% of sales by 2030 or 2035. We're at 37% in 2035.
Okay.
So we're very conservative because we believe the adoption is tougher than people think it is. And so we believe people are going to hold on to their ICE cars, and even out in 2050, as it converts from new car sales to the VIO, we have the VIO being 50-50 ICE and BEV in 2050. And people might not agree with that, and they say, well, the government can mandate it and things. We think that ultimately consumer demand wins out.
Especially in such a large purchase.
Yeah, it's the second largest purchase that you make, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And what ICE technology alternatives do you see as ongoing market players?
So I mentioned EREV. So I believe that is, and there are like 18 Chinese models of coming out EREVs. And by the way, GM had one of the first out in the market back in 2011. The Volt is an EREV, an extended range electric vehicle where the engine is not driving the car, it's just driving a generator that builds up the batteries. Well, you can make that engine extremely efficient because it doesn't have the loads on it, right? All it's doing is driving that generator. So we believe with low carbon fuels and near zero emission fuels that technology and the 48 volt mild hybrid can really hold ICE cars in for a very long time.
Absolutely. Now the market is changing from nickel-based batteries to lithium iron phosphate.
Right.
How will that affect the aftermarket's plans for sustainable remanufacturing or reclamation?
So we've had a bit of a bait and switch by the Chinese. They got out ahead of the market, as I said, by 15 years, and they invested in nickel, manganese, cobalt batteries. And they forced the whole market to go that way. So everybody jumped on board, and then the government said, well, you need to produce it in the country. So we began building plants. I think there are like 39 different plants in formation. There are 15 actually being built right now in the United States. They all started out as NMC, battery production. Then the Chinese switched to LFP, or lithium iron phosphate. Well, it's kind of 30 to 50% less expensive. And actually, the performance from a range, on the car can be just as good, but it's a less expensive battery. So the Chinese did a little bit of a bait and switch. They made the market go one way. They switched to LFP, and now they're doing it again with going solid state batteries. I think it's probably still, even though you see the headlines now, probably 2 to 3 years out where that technology comes in. But think about that. You can charge those things in 10 minutes. The fire risk is nil in a solid state battery. So that's the future. Eventually, everybody will get there. But I believe that the thing that holds ICE cars in to bring back around to that is coupling an ICE engine with an electric drive, and it just makes a lot of sense. So I think that governments on the mandate will come around to the fact that there are ways to be ultra low emission without actually getting rid of emissions or gas.
It seems like people are more comfortable with the hybrid idea as well. It's a little less out there than going full EV.
So we're a big country, right? And we travel longer distances than other people. And I live in a farm outside of a town. I don't really want to consume most of my battery getting to the place where I have to get. So it will come, as I say, over time. The range will extend. I love electric drive, I really do. But I love the mix of ICE and electric even more.
Very interesting. Well, Derek Kaufman, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. This has been Aftermarket News. I'm Emma Henderson. Have a great day.